My parents hid my acceptance letter so I'd stay home and care for my brother, but I found out they've been lying about everything, including who my brother really is. When I confronted them, they locked me in the basement. At 17, I escaped with my brother and discovered my family's dark secret. My parents were running an illegal business, and my brother was part of their cover-up. Now they're in jail, I'm in college with a full scholarship, and I realize everything they did was to get their hands on my inheritance. I, 24 female, have been reflecting on how different my life is compared to where I was at 17, and wanted to share my story of how I escaped my parents' plan for my future. Growing up, everything seemed normal at first. We were a typical middle-class family in a small town: Mom, Dad, me, and my younger brother Max. My parents worked long hours, my dad at his import business, and my mom as his secretary. This meant that from the time I was about 12, I was responsible for taking care of Max, who was 5 years younger than me. Max was a quiet kid, always keeping to himself. He had some developmental issues that my parents said required special care. He didn't go to regular school. My mom homeschooled him when she had time, but mostly it fell to me to teach him basic things. I didn't mind at first. I loved Max, and I thought I was just doing my part for the family. As I got older, my responsibilities increased. By high school, I was essentially running the household, cooking, cleaning, helping Max with his lessons, making sure he took his medication. My parents were almost never home during the day, and when they were, they spent most of their time in Dad's home office with the door locked. Despite all this, I managed to excel in school. I joined every academic club I could, partly because I genuinely loved learning, but also because it gave me legitimate time away from home. My English teacher, Mrs. Peterson, recognized my potential and encouraged me to apply to colleges. "You're brilliant," she told me. "You could get a scholarship anywhere you apply." I didn't tell my parents at first. When I was a junior, I started secretly applying to colleges with Mrs. Peterson's help. She let me use her address for the application materials. By senior year, I had applied to 15 schools, including my dream school, Columbia University. I knew it was a long shot, but Mrs. Peterson convinced me to try. Then came the day that would change everything. Mrs. Peterson called me into her classroom during lunch period, her face glowing with excitement. "It came," she whispered, handing me a large envelope. "Columbia. And it's thick. That's a good sign." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was an acceptance letter and information about a full scholarship based on academic merit. I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I was going to escape. That night, I decided to tell my parents. I thought they would be proud, even if they were concerned about who would take care of Max. I waited until after dinner when Max was in his room. "Mom," I said, pulling out the acceptance letter, "I have some news." My dad barely looked up from his phone. "What is it?" I applied to Columbia University, and I got in, with a full scholarship. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stared at me, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. My father's face darkened. "Columbia?" he finally said. "In New York? Why would you do that without discussing it with us first?" "I wanted it to be a surprise," I said, my excitement quickly fading. "It's a full scholarship. Everything would be covered." "That's not the point," my mother chimed in. "What about Max? Who's going to take care of him if you're in New York?" I thought maybe we could hire someone to help, or... "We can't afford that," my father cut me off. "And Max doesn't do well with strangers, you know that." The conversation deteriorated from there. They accused me of being selfish, of abandoning my brother, of not considering the family's needs. By the end of the night, my father had taken my acceptance letter, saying he needed to think about this. The next morning, the letter was gone. When I asked about it, my father claimed he'd never seen it. "Must have been a dream," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Or maybe it was a rejection you're too embarrassed to admit." I was stunned. "Dad, you held it in your hands last night. It was an acceptance with a full scholarship." "Don't be ridiculous," my mother interjected. "If you'd gotten such an offer, we'd certainly remember it." That's when I realized they were gaslighting me. They were actually going to pretend the letter never existed. I called Mrs. Peterson that afternoon from a school phone, and she confirmed my suspicions. "They're trying to keep you there," she said, her voice tight with anger. This isn't right. Let me see what I can do." But before Mrs. Peterson could help, my parents announced we were moving. My father claimed he had a business opportunity in another state that he couldn't pass up. We had to be out of our house in 2 weeks. I would finish high school through an online program. I knew then that I was trapped. They were deliberately sabotaging my chance to go to college, to keep me as Max's permanent caretaker. The new house was isolated, located on the outskirts of a tiny town I'd never heard of. My parents' commute became even longer, leaving me alone with Max for days at a time. With no car and no nearby neighbors, I was completely cut off. I tried to make the best of it. I finished high school online with perfect grades, even though my parents seemed indifferent to my achievement. I focused on teaching Max, who remained quiet and withdrawn. Sometimes I caught him staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not sadness, exactly, but something more complex. One night, about 6 months after we moved, I was looking for a book I thought Max might enjoy when I noticed something strange in his room. His medication bottles, which I dutifully filled every week, looked different. I picked one up and examined it. The label had my brother's name, but the doctor was someone I'd never heard of, and the medication wasn't one I recognized. Curious, I opened the bottle and searched online for the pill description. What I found made no sense. It wasn't a medication for developmental issues. It was a powerful sedative, typically prescribed for severe anxiety or insomnia. Why would Max be taking this? And why had I never known? I decided to experiment. The next day, instead of giving Max his usual pills, I pretended to. I watched him carefully throughout the day, expecting to see some change in his behavior. By afternoon, it was like I was seeing a different person. Max was more alert, more present than I'd ever seen him. He made eye contact. He spoke in complete sentences. He asked me questions about the book we were reading, thoughtful questions that showed comprehension far beyond what he'd demonstrated before. "Max?" I asked, stunned. "Have you always understood everything this well?" He looked at me, his eyes clear and focused. "Yes," he said simply, "but I'm not supposed to show it." My blood ran cold. "Who told you that? Mom and Dad?" He nodded. "They said it's our secret, that I need to take the medicine and act slow, so you'll stay and take care of me." I felt sick. My parents had been medicating my brother, deliberately suppressing his intelligence and development, just to make sure I had a reason to stay home. It was beyond cruel, beyond manipulative. It was abuse. "Max," I said carefully, "do you know why Mom and Dad are gone so much? What they do for work?" Max looked uncomfortable. "Dad's office. I'm not supposed to go in there." "But have you?" I pressed. He hesitated, then nodded. "Once, when they were gone for 3 days, I saw papers, pictures, money, lots of money." That night, after Max was asleep, I broke into my father's office using a credit card to slip the lock. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions. My father wasn't running an import business. The documents scattered across his desk suggested something much more sinister. Fake IDs, ledgers with coded entries, photographs of people who appeared to be unconscious. I took pictures of everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to redo several shots. Then, I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it and slipped out, locking the door behind me. The next day, I began planning our escape. I knew I couldn't leave Max behind, not now that I knew what was happening to him. But I had no money, no car, and no allies except Mrs. Peterson, who was hundreds of miles away. I decided to call her anyway, using the landline while my parents were gone. "Mrs. Peterson?" I said when she answered. "It's me. I need help." I explained everything, the hidden acceptance letter, the move, the medication, and what I'd found in my father's office. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long pause. "I'm coming to get you," she finally said. "Both of you. But it will take time, at least a week. Can you hold on until then?" I assured her we could, and we made a plan. She would drive to our location, and we would meet her at the end of our road at midnight exactly 1 week later. All I had to do was keep up the charade for 7 more days. But on day 5, everything fell apart. My father came home unexpectedly and caught me packing a small bag with essentials. When he demanded an explanation, I panicked and told him I knew everything about Max's medication, about his business, about the hidden acceptance letter. I've never seen someone's face change so quickly. All pretense of being a caring father vanished, replaced by cold fury. He grabbed me by the arm and dragged me to the basement, where he locked me in a small storage room that had been converted into what I can only describe as a cell, complete with a reinforced door and no windows. "You'll stay here until you learn your place," he hissed through the door. "And if you've told anyone, I'll make sure Max pays for your mistake." I was trapped for 2 days. They gave me water and some food, but otherwise left me alone in the dark. I could hear movements upstairs, voices arguing. I worried about Max, about what they might be doing to him now that their plan was exposed. On the 3rd day, I heard a commotion upstairs, shouting, things breaking. Then silence. A few minutes later, the basement door opened, and footsteps approached my cell. "Hello?" I called out, terrified of who might answer. "Police, is someone down here?" A man's voice responded. I've never been so relieved in my life. As it turned out, Mrs. Peterson had gotten worried when I didn't answer her daily check-in call. She'd contacted the local police and convinced them to do a welfare check. When they arrived, they'd found my parents in the process of packing to flee, and Max heavily sedated on the couch. The evidence in my father's office was enough for them to make arrests on the spot. Later, I would learn the full truth. My parents were part of an identity theft and insurance fraud ring. They'd been stealing people's information and filing false claims for years. Max wasn't even developmentally disabled. They'd been drugging him since he was small to maintain the appearance of needing special care, ensuring I would stay home as his caretaker. But there was one more revelation waiting for me. During the investigation, the police discovered that Max wasn't actually my biological brother. He had been taken from his real family when he was just a toddler, part of my parents' scheme. His real name was Daniel, and his biological parents had been searching for him for years. The most shocking part? My parents had targeted me specifically. I wasn't their biological daughter either. I had been adopted as an infant, a chosen, because I was the beneficiary of a sizable trust fund that would become available when I turned 25, or completed college, whichever came first. They'd planned to keep me isolated, prevent me from going to college, and somehow gain control of my trust fund when I turned 25. The Columbia acceptance and scholarship had threatened to derail their entire plan. If I went to college, I'd gain access to my trust fund early, and they'd lose their chance to get their hands on it. It's been 7 years since that day. Max, or Daniel, as he now goes by, was reunited with his real family. They keep in touch with me, and he's thriving now, showing the intelligence that was suppressed for so long. He's actually in medical school now, determined to help other victims of abuse. As for me, I did eventually go to Columbia, though a year later than planned. The university honored my scholarship once they understood the circumstances. I graduated with honors and now work as a child advocate, helping kids who've been in situations like mine and Daniel's. My parents are serving long prison sentences for multiple felonies, including kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, and child abuse. I haven't visited them and don't plan to. Sometimes I look back at the person I was at 17, scared, isolated, manipulated, and I can hardly believe how far I've come. I have my own apartment now, friends who know my whole story, and work that gives me purpose. I even have access to my trust fund, which turns out to be substantial enough that I could retire early if I wanted to. But the greatest gift of all is freedom. The freedom to choose my own path, to help others find theirs, and to know that the cycle of abuse that defined my childhood has been broken for good. I've learned that family isn't always about blood relations. Sometimes, like in the case of Mrs. Peterson, it's about who steps up when you need them most. And sometimes, it's about the family you build for yourself after escaping the one you were trapped in. So if you're reading this and feeling trapped like I was, please know that escape is possible. Help exists, and your life can become something beautiful, even after unimaginable darkness. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your supportive comments. To answer some common questions, yes, I did testify against my parents at their trial. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most liberating. No, I haven't changed my name. I thought about it, but decided I wanted to reclaim my identity rather than run from it. For those asking about Mrs. Peterson, She's still in my life. She actually came to my college graduation, and we have dinner once a month. Some heroes don't wear capes. I'm working on a book about my experience that I hope will help others identify the warning signs of this kind of abuse. I'll share more when it's closer to publication. And to those sharing your own stories in the comments, I see you, I believe you, and you are not alone.